This is the BioCentury Show. The BioCentury Show is brought to you by the second BioCentury Bay Helix East-West Biopharma Summit. Join us October 2nd to 4th in Kendall Square to debate how to globalize biopharma innovation to benefit patients and achieve an ROI for investors.
Hello and welcome to the BioCentury Show. I'm Simone Fishburn, Editor-in-Chief at BioCentury. I am joined today, delighted to be joined today, by Steve Bates, CEO of the BIA, that is the UK's Bioindustry Association. Steve has led the BIA since 2012. And in that period, we've really seen the UK biotech industry take I'm going to call it a sharp upward trajectory and become, by our count, the third most active hub in the world, at least for new company formation. I can guarantee you that Steve has many more statistics at his fingertips, probably. So, Steve, we're going to get into some of the specifics about what BIA has done, where the UK sector is headed. But, you know, a couple of things, and, you know, starting with thinking about building a hub. Now, there's many regions in the world that have high quality science, good hospitals, and even ready capital. They all tell BioCentury, they also want to become hubs. The UK managed to kick itself out of the doldrums. You can hear I'm from the UK, so I feel that I can say that. You know, decades ago, it was in the doldrums, and it's really managed to change that. And I would say on top of that, that the ecosystem has really weathered a bunch of storms. We first wrote about, I think it was in 2016, how it was taking off. Since then, it's weathered Brexit, collapse of Woodford, pandemic, and I hope even this market downturn. It seems to be quite robust. So I want to start my first question to you, especially for people looking to grow hubs from the ground up. To what degree is the success due to policies that have been put in place to encourage it versus sort of organic growth?
So, Simone, thank you. I mean, I think it's probably people. I mean, people who like working together and find the UK a great place to do that, where you've got many of the enablers. If you've got the great people, then that attracts money, and we're blessed with a great science base. I think the policies can go around that, but it's the people who make things happen. And I think the UK, London as a world city, the density that we've got in terms of the universities, the ease to be able to get to places like Oxford or Cambridge from the centre of London, the global connectivity to Boston or to the West Coast is also part of this. But I think if you look at the individuals, and we've got some enabling institutions, whether those be universities or some of the bigger companies, which lots of people have been through, that at the base of what we do. And I think what I'm really excited about this year, it feels like the Jefferies conference this year, and we're doing our thing together in November. It feels like San Francisco did the JP Morgan conference did a couple of decades ago. I think it's that connectivity is coming together, and people can see they can get stuff done in the UK.
Well, I need to dig into that a bit because, yeah, we're very excited about the Jefferies conference. We'll be holding an event there. And certainly people tell us that it's either the JP Morgan of Europe or the next JP Morgan, and there's a buzz there. You say the people, but the people have been in the UK for a long time. I'm not sure if it's new people. And so let's talk a little bit about the BIA. I'm going to come back to policies in a minute because I want to start with something that is still a little bit fresh in people's minds, and ask about the role that an organization like yours can make in fostering the growth. I know there's a lot of stuff you do behind the scenes as well as in front of the scenes. Actually, people tell me very good things. So, you know, one thing that's fresh in mind is the SVB collapse and the HSBC deal. I want to see sort of what role you played in that and why that is such an important outcome.
Yeah, I mean, I think what we're able to do is we're able to connect people together and influence. So we've built very strong relationships down the years, in part because of some of the challenges that we've had. We've built great relationships with UK government at all levels. I think that they they learned a lot about what the capability of the industry was during COVID, and we were able to provide expertise into that. So we've got good relationships there. And we've got a fantastic network of companies in membership, from the large to the small, and many of the venture capitalists as well. So we're able to convene very rapidly organizations, and we could see the challenges of SVB coming at us from members very clearly in that week. And we knew that the UK experience would be different, because we knew that the banking regulations here were different than in the US. So we could see that there would be a particular challenge and a particular need, and we would need to activate our members and activate our relationships with government, because there was a particular moment on the Friday night where the UK government in the Treasury, the Bank of England, put out a statement that said this wasn't a systemic problem for the country. Well, it wasn't for your high street mortgages, for your downtown businesses, but certainly for the innovation ecosystem. We knew the extent to which Silicon Valley Bank banked biotech and lots of other tech innovation in the UK. So we were able to pick up the phone and say, hang on a minute, I think this is going to be a systemic problem if we can't open on Monday. And one of the benefits that we've got is, because we're a community that's small enough to know each other and small enough to be networked, we were able to work very closely, get the evidence that was needed to players senior in government, and construct for them a solution, or the need for a solution. And then we were lucky enough to know some of the players in HSBC who
did you bring to the table? Can you talk about that?
So I suppose we brought to the table the Treasury. We brought to the table a significant number of venture capitalists who were able to size the problem. We were able to rapidly survey our community, and they were sharing some fairly detailed data as to what the risk was. That was enabling us then to go to the Treasury officials, to the Department of Innovation and Science, and cabinet ministers with a detailed breakdown of what this looked like. And then on the other side, we were able to work with those who are putting together bids and solutions to say that there is a real opportunity in these companies. These companies aren't there's no problem with the financing of the companies. This is actually a banking problem here, and if we get through the other side, there's a good business to be built here. So we're able to give confidence to HSBC as to the future of the businesses. We're able to provide to the government detailed information in real time about what the nature of the challenge was and the impact it would have for the innovation sector. And we were able to bring a community together through the government rapidly, which I think is more difficult to do in a country the size of the US than it is in the size of the UK.
So, another sort of example of warding off sort of problems that are unique, I don't know if they're more unique to the sector, but accelerated in our sector, relates to the R&D tax credits, where the government was recently going to introduce changes that would have been very adverse to the biotech industry. I don't know if that translates to other countries, but can you just walk us through that story? What was at stake, and why is that such a priority for growing biotech in the UK?
So the R&D tax credit scheme in the UK has been around for a while. It's particularly advantageous for small and medium-sized enterprises. Traditionally, each time there's a fiscal moment, a budget by the government, there's an opportunity to review and have a look at those things. And often we're involved in technical discussions like what should be eligible for the credits. A recent example would be we've made the case that cloud computing costs for small companies are an important part of development if you're developing a tech bio piece, and they've said, yes, you can have that in a R&D tax credit. So we've been expecting changes like that. And we've been involved in consultations. Last year in the UK, we had a number of changes of government, and we ended up essentially with 3 budgets in a year. We had
a number of changes of government. I think we can stipulate to that, yeah.
So we were in an unusual scenario where economic policy was being made on the hoof, and the incumbents had got rid of some of the senior civil servants who would traditionally provide a second pair of eyes on some of their decisions. So in a very breakneck budget, they changed the rates for small companies, I think, without really realizing the implications this had on ongoing investment into the sector. As soon as we saw this, we were able to say, look, do you really mean this? And then again, provide data from companies and venture capitalists as to the implications of this, the changing nature of where this put the UK in competitive rank. And as a result of the relationships that we've got, and hopefully the arguments we were able to make about the impact this would have, the deleterious impact, we were able to rapidly work with the government, so that as they came to their next fiscal moment 6 months later, they were able to ameliorate that and move the rates back to something that's close to globally competitive, if not better than that. And we'll continue to make these discussions. It's about, I think, providing that detail, that expertise, the real understanding of what's happening in an innovation economy in a time frame that works for decision makers. That is the essence of the relationship, and in a sense, this goes back to us being able to provide expert advice on, COVID developments, or expert advice on the implications of Brexit changes, or the implications of changing visa regimes and other things. If you're an expert partner, then hopefully you're a consistent voice and can be and make a difference.
Yeah, and we're going to get to a couple of those issues, but the reason there's one more sort of peculiarity to the UK I want to get into, and the reason I bring these up is that I do feel that there's all the momentum and the people that you talked about, but there's also headwinds, and I do think, for all that you said, I think there are certain policies that might have been in place that make it favourable to invest there, for investors to invest there. We've seen some of the very big players really create footprints, and obviously AstraZeneca and GSK, that's their home base. But one last feature I want to talk about here is the issue of pension funds, and this is important because the limiting factor has always been growth capital. So, well, I won't say always been, but now there's capital to get companies off the ground, but enabling them to really grow to what we've recently profiled as the tier jumpers, jumping tier of market caps has been very difficult. And opening up these pension funds is key to unlocking some of that. So maybe you can tell both the UK and international audiences how this plays out and what the implications of change would be, what you're looking to do.
Yeah, so I mean, on one level, the UK scale-ups from life sciences are doing pretty well. They're able to access global capital, compete with global peers, and go on NASDAQ reasonably successfully, as with the peers from other parts of the world. So on one level, I think we've proven that we can create value and create meaningful sized and scale companies delivering cutting edge therapeutics and other products. So what we've discovered through that is that they are largely doing that by being funded from essentially US cash and the significant crossover funds that have been doing that. Now, on one level, that's not terrible because we've got great companies and they're growing. The implications of that, though, are that sitting in London, we've got a great financial services centre that is moving money around the world, and what it's choosing not to do is participate and invest in one of the most exciting sectors that the UK actually also has significant footprint in. So what we've been trying to do is get UK pension funds, which in the low interest rate era have largely exited for a number of complicated reasons, equities almost in entirety, so that they are not present, to come back into the innovation economy in the UK, because we think this will basically be good for pensioners or future pensioners, people who have got pension pots, but it will also enable us to add to the cap table some significant players from the UK who can then participate alongside US investors or Middle East investors or others. And in time, that can then produce companies of size and scale that can then, as the City of London, in terms of the stock exchange, is changing how it's approaching this, think about becoming a listings location as well. So we're trying to do it in stages, and we hope what that will do is unlock new forms of pension funds. well, they are already being unlocked through what's called the compact. There was an agreement in the Mansion House of the City of London of some of the big pension players in the UK that they were going to make meaningful steps to invest in innovation economy in the UK, life sciences, tech, and other things in the next 12 months. That's seen a sea change in attitude, and we're now working through what's that going to look like in practice. And some early indications, there was a Series C last week from Apollo Therapeutics, where M&G, a big UK pension fund, came in alongside US pension funds who already know how to do this. I think we'll see the extension of new forms of either funds of funds or people building capacity within pension funds to invest. Obviously, the Canadian schemes are of size and scale, as are under scale compared to the Australians or the Canadians. Once you've got capacity inside your organisation, it's much easier to do this. And I think we're on that journey where people are looking at how they're going to do this and investigating a number of routes, dipping their toe in the water if they've already had their toe in, wading in, and a couple have dived in already. And I think we'll see a series of these things develop as people understand the opportunity. And I think this will also lead to UK participation in global more UK investment participating in global opportunities than we've seen hitherto.
We're going to take a break now, Steve, and when we come back, we'll talk more about the potential and the issues for the UK biotech ecosystem.
Emerging biopharma companies in the US, Europe, and Asia face the same dilemma. How do you globalize to deliver innovation to patients and reward investors? A handful of biopharma companies will build global operations. Most will achieve global economics through partnering and licensing. Others will capture a share of the economics by enabling global development and financings. This October in Kendall Square, BioCentury and BayHelix once again bring together decision makers and investors to address these industry challenges and to form trusted cross-border relationships. Register today at biocenturyeastwest.com.
We're back now with the BioCentury Show with Steve Bates from the BIA. So, Steve, for many people outside the UK, they hear the UK, they think Brexit. They still think Brexit, I got to tell you. Biotech, as we talked about, has actually weathered it pretty well. There's one area that I think has been hit or affected, and that's MHRA, the regulatory agency. Now, of course, EMA used to be in London, now is in Amsterdam, and that left the UK regulator, I would say, with both an opportunity and a challenge. The challenge so far has been in talent retention and recruitment, and that, of course, relates to funding. There may be other challenges. The opportunity, though, is to mark itself as a destination of choice for clinical trials and maybe more. Can you talk about MHRA and what are the issues at stake, and how do you see it playing out?
So I think the MHRA showed what it can do during COVID. If you look at the place in the world that was first adopting the newest innovations in terms of vaccines, the UK was able to get those registrations away and then turn that into a scheme that could actually be deployed very rapidly. So the thing that the UK has got, and we know we've got if we get it right, is the capacity to put this system together and do things rapidly. And that's what I think motivates the players in the UK system to put this together. You're right that it's been a very, very big change for the MHRA from being part of an integrated European system, perhaps a leader in many of the aspects there, to working out what they can do on their own. And I think that that's still playing through because there's been some recent changes to bring the UK closer to Europe than was politically possible 18 months ago. So we've rejoined the science scheme in Horizon Europe recently. So I think the trick or the discussion that's being had here in the UK is where is the opportunity? That there is going to be opportunity for where there are complex things that need to be put together. So we're doing a lot around AI and device. What are the opportunities if we're taking steps out of drug development as a result of having AI processes or in silico processes? How do we translate that into a regulatory program that can accept and anticipate and operate in those ways? So rather than doing everything as a big bang change? Are there process changes that can be put together? Now, what you need to do that is you need the expertise in those cutting edge areas. You need a couple of pioneering companies, and you need a regulator and a healthcare system that want to do it. And I think we've got the willingness to do that. I think where we're at the moment is trying to think about which are the best areas for that pioneering work to go in on, and where is there a simpler process of, in a sense, accepting and participating in global regulation of things, and just making things straightforward and easy for global companies. And I think that's the discussion that's being had. That is linked, of course, to your capacity to have the skilled individuals needed to do the assessment, and the MHRA is going through a process of recruitment and is thinking very hard alongside the rest of the ecosystem about what type of skill sets they need, those skill sets being slightly different given the nature of the products that we've got. And I think that's where we think that there is this opportunity. I think it will probably take a few more months before we see the MHRA come out in that, but I think they've got the confidence to try this. And I think there are a couple of areas where the UK may have, if you think about our strength in genomic data, DeepMind and the capacity that they've got in machine learning, a couple of the bigger players who've engaged in UK data sets. You can think that put that biobank stuff together. I don't know exactly what it's going to look like, but I think regulating something novel in that space, or providing the buzzwords are sandboxes for regulators to think about this. And of course, when you get to data, it may be that we are thinking beyond a medicines regulator into other forms of data regulators. And can we put those people in a room? We definitely can put those people together in the UK. What's that going to look like? A long discussion about synthetic compounds, and how do you think about those as part of a regulated step of the process to do that. So yeah, those are some of the areas where I think the pioneering will come alongside, I hope, a simple process for the more routine activity.
And the MHRA introduced things like the ILAP, the accelerated approval pathway, and that's interesting because it actually brings payers in early. But that does bring me to another question. So many of the stakeholders that we speak to cite reimbursement as a major issue for marketing drugs in the UK. NICE, which makes decisions about payment, is not very nice, they say. So what's the response, and how are you going to bring these players to market their drugs there?
Yeah, I know the importance of the UK being a launch market for UK patients, and also the benefit that brings to the UK ecosystem. We have a lot of people who work on trials and other forms of development, so we know that the value of being an early launch country, and don't underestimate that. Traditionally, there has been, for 50 odd years, there's been a voluntary deal signed between the industry and the government around pricing in the UK, not imposed through legislation in the way that we see in the States, and not restricting patents as we see in European ideas. That discussion is ongoing at the moment. The last deal has proven very unpopular and has moved the UK away from global norms on this, in part, I think, due to the extraordinary way in which medicines were and weren't used during the pandemic. So we've had a 5-year deal that's gone across a very strange period, which has resulted in some gnarly numbers that are very unpopular. My ambition and my hope is that a deal that can bring the UK back into global norms and in reimbursement terms is what I hope we can have before the turn of the year. We need something before we get to 2024, and that will be the way in which we can move this forward. But yeah, it's definitely an issue. And on uptake, I think NICE are starting to be that they understand that that getting the appropriate use is really important. And we've seen some interesting things around Wegovy and the way in which they're going to describe that alongside some apps, using weight loss apps and alongside it. But this is an interesting one, and I think we're going to see some interesting things around how we develop with the Alzheimer's next generation Alzheimer's drugs. They're already starting to think around that. So I think their leadership is new. They've had a generational change in leadership. So I think that they get it as part of the system. and the reimbursement issue I hope can be solved through the voluntary deal.
And is this an area also where BIA is playing a part in representing the industry?
So the answer here is yes and no. I mean, a bit like pharma and bio in the States, the formal negotiating role is with the Association of British Pharmaceutical Industries, the ABPI. So we've provided insight around the edges, but we don't formally negotiate across the table. That's done by colleagues at the ABPI.
Right, good. Okay, I do want to talk about, you mentioned a couple of them, some of the real crown jewels, of course, are not in the Tower of London, but in biotech. And, you know, you rattled off a few things before. The UK Biobank is one. I hear people using that all the time. DeepMind, the Crick. Maybe talk a little bit about some of these and their strengths, and you know what you think are compelling assets for the UK ecosystem outside of obviously the specific companies.
Yeah, so I think we are lucky to be blessed with a rich heritage of investment in the life science ecosystem. The LMB in Cambridge, the laboratory there is has, you know, it's got more Nobel prizes than France. They always tell me, and you know, that type of core scientific capability, where you got great minds doing great science, does produce great activity for our ecosystem. The Sanger Centre, another place outside Cambridge where we've been doing genomics really since the inception of genomics, has got the European Bioinformatics Centre. Again, a cohort of people who've been working in the cutting edge of this for you know, over a couple of decades. It just gives the capacity to do so much, and it's really one of the reasons why the UK was doing so much of the sequencing of COVID at the height of the pandemic. So you've got real capability and real capacity in organisations like that. The Crick Institute is Europe's largest biomedical institute, right on the doorstep of King's Cross Station in the centre of London. A very, very impressive building. But what's really more impressive is the commitment to doing that, bringing together various aspects of the UK ecosystem that were already very strong, London universities, cancer research and others, with a new model of not only doing fantastic science, but also not having long tenured scientists. So the scientists, they're already thinking about what they're going to do next, rather than sit and you know, in an academic lab. They're thinking, oh, okay, I'm here for 5 or 7 years. What am I going to do next? And a good chunk of them are thinking companies and businesses in a way that perhaps a generation ago we weren't having. So that's an example of how a policy allied to people changes behaviour, and one of the reasons why I think we've got that vibrant ecosystem. And of course, if you come out of King's Cross Station, the other side, you end up in DeepMind, and DeepMind, obviously, Google's AI capability, gone from trying to solve the problems of chess and Go into the problems of protein folding, and now they are putting capacity, lots of thinking into how do we then do these health, what are the health outcomes? So you've got a lot of people around there in Demis's shop that are thinking hard, want to partner, and are thinking about what do we do with this in terms of the drug discovery, drug development pipeline? What can we do synthetically? What can we do, you know, if we use these very large, even, you know, others who are using the large language models to take steps out of the development process. So the ability to bring some of those things together, the large data sets, the genomic capability, the traditional strength in antibodies, you talked about GSK and AstraZeneca, and the fact that you can bump into lots of people in a fairly in a global city that's fairly accessible, is one of the secret sources. I always think that all magical journeys start from platform 9 3/4 at King's Cross Station, but that's probably because I'm a Harry Potter fan.
So Steve, probably will end with Harry Potter. I can certainly say a lot of those things echo very well for me. There was no Crick at the time I was there. Maybe I would have still been in the UK. I think we were all pretty blown away by the capabilities of the genomics tracking and so on of the variants during the pandemic. And I think, you know, we're going to talk about some of these and other features, I think, of the UK and of general biotech ecosystems at our event at Jefferies. So I'm going to thank you for your time. I'm going to look forward to seeing you again in London. and let our audience know that BioCentury will be in London on November the 14th on the sidelines of the Jefferies Healthcare Conference for an exclusive event co-hosted with BIA. It's going to include cocktails, so I don't know if I need to keep going, but I will. It'll also include networking, several panels, and a fireside chat with an industry KOL. Seats are limited, and they are restricted to senior-level biopharma executives and investors. You can learn more at biocentury.com/events. Thank you.
The BioCentury Show is brought to you by the second BioCentury Bay Helix East-West Biopharma Summit. Join us October 2nd to 4th in Kendall Square to debate how to globalize biopharma innovation to benefit patients and achieve an ROI for investors.